It's time for us to open the session to the floor. Please introduce yourself and make it brief and direct a question either to Prof or to the other three discussants. Thank you. Yes. Or Noiza would like to ask a question first. Yeah, all right, sure.
Sorry, I'm a panelist, so I get the chance to do so. I wanted to ask Prof. Tariq, because you were very critical of the Muslim Brotherhood. And I think for our experiences, you have, of course, challenges in a democratic nation. In Egypt, under Mubarak, it was, of course, far worse, some would say. And Muslim Brotherhood only came into being as a political entity much later. In our own experiences, we were alleged as a one-issue party to release a political prisoner in 1999. And then from that year onwards, we started creating a sort of a social justice, different policies to address economic reforms, different policies to address the issue of racial relations, and of course social cohesion. But this took time. This took a long time, and I think one of the most amazing things is in Egypt. Yes, it's still at an nascent stage, but there's always pragmatism that you have to practice in the field of politics. Do you participate in elections or not? Elections are not perfect. Certainly, I mean, we can relate to that, but do you then lose out and miss out on this chance of the possibility of governing? And the biggest, the first question really is, what do you think? I think you should be more sympathetic, in fact, to their plight. I do expect you to be critical, but from my own experiences, it's going to be very difficult. Yeah. Second bit, the fact that Egypt's premier Islamic institution, Al-Azhar, I was shocked to find that they produced a document, yeah, in the wake of the Arab Spring, listing out basic freedoms, the issue of basic freedoms to be enshrined in the new constitution. Of course, the military has turned it upside down, but the point is, the ulamas have come up with something so far-reaching, so visionary, while we in Malaysia are still stuck with a fatwa council debating whether you can use the indelible ink, whether you cannot use the indelible ink. So, I find it extremely, I was very inspired. Second question is, how do you think, how important is the role of the ulama, the Fatwa Council, even an institution like the Al-Azhar, to help bring change in a particular community? Thank you.
I'm happy. Okay, thank you. Two questions. The first one, I know that the way I'm talking about what is happening in the Middle East gives the impression that I'm very harsh and very critical with the Muslim Brotherhood and only with them and other Islamists. I am critical. But don't get me wrong in the way I am critical. There are things that I completely understand, and when I was writing on the Muslim Brotherhood, I was writing about what happened in the 40s, 50s, and then afterward, and then even writing articles in the 80s about what they were doing. There is something which is clear for me. It's a reformist movement, a legalist movement, and very pragmatic. And they evolved a great deal. And I'm not accepting or sharing the views of some, analysts saying that the Muslim Brotherhood are only changing for strategic reasons. I think it's genuine that there are things that they are moving, and the young generation from within were questioning, the way they were dealing with authority, even though at the end, and it's true, it has been the reality since the last 10 years, the great majority of the leaders are very old. The space, but this is very important. If you deal with, transparency and time, you need to deal with the young generation, and you cannot keep the young generation far from the spheres of authority. if you are serious about transparency and democracy and renewal within the structure. So I have been celebrating these movements and at the same time criticizing the organization and the structure by saying it's problematic to have this. Now the second point, which is for me important, over the few years, it's not to criticize this, the substance, the essence, and the reference, we may agree or not. But first to see in the leaders sometimes, and we had, for example, once, I am talking about it in the book on the Arab Awakening, when Dr. Mursi came to Oxford, he was invited by students, and they asked me to come and to chair the session. And I was a bit reluctant because I didn't want to be used in one way or another by criticizing him, and I came with a series of 7 questions. And I'm sorry, the answers that I got at that point, he was already the leader of the party. I was disappointed by things that I heard in 2012 that were said in the 40s and in a way which was not really new dealing with the situation. But more importantly, when I'm critical, and this is where, as someone who is dealing with politics, you deal with strategies, I'm critical about the political strategies. And I was studying what the positions that they had over the last 2 years. This is where I'm saying, yes, we need time to learn. You are completely right. It's a question of time. But when you have been 60 years in the opposition, to make so many mistakes in 2 years, it's a problem. This is my position. It's a political discussion. It's not about the essence. For example, to have been very far from the young people in Midan al-Tahrir and to be pushed by the young generations to go, they decided the day before. And then when they decided the day before, they didn't take a clear position supporting the young or dealing with the army. They were very cautious, not knowing what was happening. And then they dealt also with the army. And then they took a position saying, we are not going to run for president. First division, do we set a party or not? Yes, we set a party, they set a party, that's fine. And then second, we are not going to run for presidency. Abdel Mun'im Abul Futuh was fired. And then they decided not only to go for 1, but to go for 2. And you have to ask yourself, how come they decided to go for 2 if they were not knowing that something could happen for one of them? Meaning by this, that what was said by people, and it appeared afterward to be right, they were discussing with the army and the institution. So at one point you ask yourself, what is this kind of strategy that we are dealing with? You have to take a stand. You have to take a position. And where I am critical of these games, in fact, my sense was they were so much in opposition that their will to be now eventually acknowledged was taking over any other consideration in the political game. And my position is, and this is what, I want you to understand something which is a parallel here, because I make this very often in my critical take on this. When we had election in Gaza, and Hamas was going for it, they were helped by the international community to put as who they were represented in the ballot box, not Hamas, but the movement for reform and change. This was done by the United Nations. And the United Nations didn't want to use Hamas, and they used this, in fact, knowing that the people were going to vote for them. In fact, I said at that time, don't go for these elections, this is a trap. They want you to put you in a position when you have authority without power, and they will just after this come on you. And it happened. In fact, the election, apparently transparent election, were in fact the first transparent election in the Middle East. This is what we heard. Just after Hamas came, they were put in a situation where the Palestinians were punished, and Hamas was unable to deliver at their level. My position on this is be careful with democracy. Sometimes is offered as something which is, you can understand. With the Muslim Brotherhood, they went, at one point, it was quite clear, that the army was playing. 2 days before giving us the results, they removed from the authority of the presidency everything. And now we have a symbolic authority with no power. Is this the right strategy? I wonder. I don't think it's the right strategy for Egypt today. And I think that the army, and the army means 50% of the Egyptian economy. The army means a direct link to the American administration. It means from behind the scene that they are still controlling the country. So you can tell me, and I accept this, they have to learn. But what is the price of this learning process? What is going to be the price? And this is what I said from the beginning, I'm cautiously optimistic. And I see now, for the coming years, 3 options. The first one is an option which was presented by the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, saying we will come back to elections where the parliament is going to be elected. So saying it's 6 months, 8 months. It could be just a symbolic election for a few months, just to let the people think the emotional Egyptians, you had them. The second could be to put them in a situation where, having no power, they won't be able to deliver and they will lose their credibility. And it could come very soon because the Egyptians are tired of what is happening. Insecurity, the situation is very bad. The third option could be an Algerian scenario. You have someone who is a president, and from behind the scene, the army is controlling. And the army is controlling, meaning that, remember, the army is the United States of America. It's also something which is very important in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Don't forget that it's central with Egypt now. So this is where I'm critical. So it's very much about political strategies and questioning, in fact, the discussion. And, you know, this discourse about you are going to accept the civil state, we will have a woman as a vice president and a Christian, is very much about we are under pressure and we give, all the symbols. That's not the point. It is not going to save Egypt. So this is why I'm critical, if you understand my position on this. Now, what you are saying about Al-Azhar, there are 2 sides in Al-Azhar. There is a side which is the people who are appointed by the power, and very often they were silent. Even Al-Azhar said 3 times during the uprisings, go back, this is not Islamic. Jum'ah prayer should be in the mosques, not in Midan al-Tahrir. Midan al-Tahrir is not a halal place to pray, you know, all these things. But this is it. This is it. And you have people from within Al-Azhar who are now, they want to open up. They understand that this is the way for them to get more independency and opening up on some better religious independence within the country. But so far, what we can see is that the room for maneuver in Egypt for the religious voices is very, very narrow. And they are controlling this because it could be very powerful. Remember, the uprisings were always, and the main power was coming on Fridays. It was very powerful, and even, you know, and Sheikh Al-Qaradawi came, and these were the moment. The Fridays are essential. So if you let the religious voices being freed, and the people who are, and many are silent, you know, even Sheikh Ali Jum'ah, what he said at one point, telling the people, go back to the mosque and don't stay, it means that there is still a control of the main religious voices there. But as you are saying, from behind, from within, in fact, there are voices and there are scholars who want really a change in the society. Are they going to be able to produce, to deliver? I don't see it now, but it's very important because the revolutions should carry on and the uprisings should not stop. It might be that in the coming future something could happen. I don't see it for now.